Greetings dear viewers and welcome back to the review program. In this episode, we'll talk about the media freedom in Uzbekistan. Before we dive into the discussion, my colleague has conducted interviews with the local residents about their views on the media industry in Uzbekistan. I mostly watch social networks, but TV is more large scale. It voices all the processes that take place abroad and in our country. Social networks are more focused on the development of an idea or brand, so I trust TV more. I watch TV very rarely. I don't trust social networks at all. I watch social networks, but I don't trust them because one news is taken and spread on different sources. One topic is promoted by everyone. Such a system works on both TV and social media. In social networks, they can also give comments from officials or other sources, but on TV, it is not always possible. I think our media lack transparency. I have the same attitude towards social networks and television. I don't watch TV at all. I watch social networks, particularly YouTube, and I trust social networks. We watch TV a lot, and I think that they never lie. They always have reliable information. Uzbekistan has made commendable progress in promoting media freedom by implementing important legislative and structural reforms. The emergence of independent media outlets and the role of digital platforms have contributed to a more diverse media landscape. However, there are still several challenges that remain. In May, at the Oli Majlis on the outcome of the April 30 referendum, President of Uzbekistan Shavkat Mirziyoyev spoke about guarantees of freedom for journalists. He called the media journalists the most influential force conveying the voice and opinion of people to the general public and state authorities. To constantly pursue a policy of openness in our society, freedom of the media and the right to receive, use and disseminate information are guaranteed. At the same time, freedom of speech also means responsibility. That is, we must not forget the reliability and impartiality as the main criteria in the information space, the head of the state said. One of the pivotal changes in Uzbekistan's media ecosystem has been the registration of independent media outlets. Once considered burdensome and restrictive, this process has been streamlined, allowing new and diverse voices to emerge. As a result, citizens now have access to a wider variety of news sources, contributing to a more pluralistic media landscape. Furthermore, digital media has been crucial in enforcing media freedom in Uzbekistan. The widespread adoption of the internet and social media platforms has provided an alternative space for journalists and citizens to share information and engage in public discourse. Online news portals and independent blogs have gained popularity, enabling independent journalists to reach a larger audience and express diverse perspectives. However, one of the key concerns is the lingering culture of self-censoring among journalists. Although the legal constraints have been lifted, some journalists still restrain themselves due to the fear of social pressure. This culture of self-censorship harms the development of the truly independent and critical media. So we have invited a special guest to our studio today, Ambassador of Israel to Uzbekistan, Ms. Zehavit Ben Hillel, to talk about the media industry of Uzbekistan. Good evening, Ms. Zehavit. It's nice to have you in our studio today.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here with you.
My first question to you would be, how do you estimate the media freedom and overall the media industry of Uzbekistan today?
On one hand, yes, it's okay to be critical when you look at the situation, but at the same time, we need to be understanding that freedom of speech is not something that is born overnight. Mm-hmm. It's a process. People have to change their attitudes when regarding to freedom in general. So I want to believe that Uzbekistan is on the right track. I know journalists in this country, and I know that they're professional. They're working on their professionalism. They acquire tools so they can do their job better. I think the country in general the government understand the importance of journalism and the role of journalism. So I think this is a slow process, and I want to hope that we're in the right track.
What have you observed during the years of being in Uzbekistan so far?
We have to take into account the fact that I personally have a language barrier. Mm-hmm. I mean, I cannot consume the media in Uzbekistan firsthand because I don't speak Uzbek, mm-hmm. and I hardly speak Russian. So in that respect, I always have to have it in a way translated to me, mm-hmm. Or handpicked to me. It's not like in Israel when I log on to any news website or in English, and I can freely take it in and have my own assessment. So here I'm a little limited, and it's my own fault because maybe I should have done better in learning the local language, which is very difficult, I find. But I do consume the media because I believe that different types of media, whether it's a news website or TV or radio, they are they are the eyes and ears of the public in that respect. We cannot know everything.
True.
We need somebody to bring it to us. And this is one of the biggest roles of the media, I find. Whether you're an inhabitant of Tashkent, or whether you live in Andijan, or whether you live in Nukus, you need somebody to bring the news to you. So I think in that respect, there's a huge variety in more and more in Uzbek, which is your language. It's important with information about anything from entertainment to politics. This is the role of the media. So I see that it exists and it's very active, and this is something that I also use. I see myself like any other citizen of Uzbekistan. I also need the journalists to be my eyes and ears and bring this information to me. So definitely a client of the media here for sure.
Does embassy cooperate with the media, with the local media closely?
Of course, because thank you very much for this question, because yes, we have to remember that we are also in a way providers of news to some respect.
True.
Whether we do events of the embassy that we want to bring to the knowledge of the public, whether there's a special event in Israel that we want to talk about, whether it's news, whether it's a cultural event. So we definitely have very close relations with the media here. I find them very open, very accepting, always willing to hear what the embassy has to say, what I have to say. Sometimes I write op-eds and we publish it in the media if there's an issue that I attach great importance to. So very, very good cooperation and a lot of openness and also curiosity about the events that we do and what is happening in Israel. So all in all, absolutely good relations.
Why do you think people are so afraid to show the truth?
It's a very good question. I mean, I grew up in a country that was established 75 years ago, and part of its core values is democracy, is truth as a pillar of who we are as a society. So in a way, and I'm not saying Israel is perfect, Israel is far from perfect, we have our problems, we have our processes as well, but this is something that I grew up with, and I cherish the truth. But the truth for some people is, first of all, they're afraid to show it because they think of different implications. And second of all, they want to hide things that they think the public should know. And as an Israeli and as an Israeli diplomat, you can imagine that I think that truth should be out there. Journalists should have the ability and the freedom to report on everything that is happening in Uzbekistan, in other parts of the world, because the public has a right to know.
Talking about the truth, do you believe TV broadcasts or do you watch the social media news mostly?
So this is a very personal thing. I mean, I'm not a big TV watcher. But even social media, I'm very, very particular. I used to be. Now I have to maybe reevaluate my choices. But I was a huge Twitter user. I know that Twitter is not as popular in Uzbekistan as it is in other parts of the world. But I can tell you, and let me quote a good friend of mine who's a journalist in Israel. He told me once, he said, I don't watch the news. I don't read the newspaper. All I do is follow certain people, certain institutions, certain government bodies. I watch all of them. I follow all of them on Twitter. And I have a feed that is specific to me and what is interesting to me. And this is how he gets his information. Now, social media, again, not perfect. But I want to believe that the information that is brought to me, let's say on Twitter, is as accurate as it can be. Yes, and whenever I go home, my mom is an avid television news watcher. She has the news open all the time, and I'm like, whenever I come in and when I visit her, I said, can we turn off the news? Can we watch something else? I think maybe it's because of my job also, which is very much news related. We need to know what is happening, but I think that we're fortunate to live in an era when you don't necessarily have to depend just on television. Television is an important source, one source, but you have other avenues that you can take to bring to you the information that you find interesting. Another interesting thing about Israel is radio, news radio, almost 24/7. Israelis are news addicts. I mean, I can easily say that. They need to know what is happening at all times. So when you go into a taxi, the news is on. When the bus driver will listen to the news. People are on a must-know basis all the time. So journalists in Israel are working very hard.
So radio is the most popular
I would say that radio, because radio is very accessible. You don't need to be in a place and look at the screen. You can just be anywhere. You can ride your bike, you can sit in a car, you can be in a bus, you can listen to the news at all time. But of course, social media is very, very popular, also news related.
Let's watch the next report that is slightly connected with that.
Since the beginning of April, bloggers' income from their page on YouTube video hosting has fallen sharply. The main reason is that YouTube has stopped funding the channel's authors for the Uzbek audience. Although YouTube has not made an official statement on the matter, there are several reasons for this. The most important of these assumptions is that YouTube is not officially operating in Uzbekistan. This means that bloggers will have additional features in countries where YouTube is officially operating, YouTube Premium and YouTube Music. However, these services have not worked in Uzbekistan before or now. Nowadays, advertising revenue does not work either. In this regard, Komil Alamjonov and Saida Mirzioyeva met with the US ambassador to Uzbekistan, Jonathan Hennig. Many projects were discussed at the meeting. In particular, the issues of establishing cooperation with YouTube and thereby jointly solving some problems related to the information sector were discussed. Many of our bloggers received complaints about YouTube monetization limitations. Therefore, at the meeting, we agreed with the ambassador to organize a meeting with representatives of this company and study the situation, Alamjonov stated.
Do you think these kind of actions will improve the quality of the content and somehow influence how the local bloggers and journalists will produce news or content?
It's very interesting. We have to remember, I think, first and foremost, that all platforms of social media are basically, business based. So even a platform like YouTube that we all pretty much take for granted, it's a company. They want to make money, and until they're going to open all their services, I guess, in Uzbekistan, maybe it's not worthwhile for them to be active here. The problem is that it does harm bloggers here because they're so used to have YouTube as their platform. So I think it's a very good notion that that the authorities here and the presidential administration wants to bring YouTube here officially, to open all type of YouTube channels, tools in Uzbekistan, and I think this is going to be very beneficial for bloggers here. In the meantime, I guess they can probably find alternative channels. I mean, Telegram, for example, is very, very popular here. It's not that people don't have ways to get to their bloggers, to follow their bloggers, but I think it's a very good initiative. I think it's good that there's understanding from the government that it's needed here, that the bloggers, they need to have good and reliable platforms that they can broadcast from, and hopefully this is going to happen fast and soon.
What initiatives does the Embassy of Israel provide to local journalists to support their activities?
So, first of all, I'm in touch with several journalists on quite often, so there's a dialogue and understanding. It's important for us also to follow and understand what the situation is with the media, and in a way what forms and ways we can contribute and help. So first and foremost, my favorite topic of conversation is always Mashav. Mashav is Israel's development agency under the Foreign Ministry, and we also provide training and courses for journalists at least once a year, and this is happening in Israel. So we can choose Uzbek journalists, and we've done this in the past, and they go to Israel, they spend 2-3 weeks in Israel with journalists from other parts of the world, depending on the language, of course, because we have Russian and we have English. And so it's not only understanding maybe best practices of journalism, because it's it's like being a surgeon. You have to be very good at what you do, but also exchanging views with other journalists that may be going through similar experiences as you, or maybe different, and you learn from their experiences. So this is one way, and we have, I think, once a year, and we always make sure that we're going to send representative from Uzbekistan. Also, we managed to do once, since I was here, we did training for journalists. We did it in cooperation with Anhol, and we did it online. Something that we're very fortunate to do nowadays, and it makes it much more affordable for us. We did a seminar for local journalists with Russian speaking journalists from Israel, when they again talked about best practices, their experience, etc. And I think it was very successful. And this is something that I think that we should revisit. Maybe this time we can maybe do a seminar here in Uzbekistan. Maybe it doesn't have to be in Russian. Maybe we can bring a specialist that can do it in English. I think there are quite a few very good English speakers, journalists in Uzbekistan already. So I think this is a good wake-up call for us to go back and revisit this topic and find what other ways and means we can do in order to contribute to better the level of journalism in this country.
To conclude this interview, I would like to ask you, what recommendations would you give to journalists out there, young journalists? How can they improve their skills and activities?
So I think, like any other profession, is of course education. Continue your studying, learn good tools, methods. What is good journalism? How do you become a good journalist? Whether it's ethics. How do you do your job better? So education is always key for every profession. I think also as a person, to keep a very open mind, to develop critical thinking, not to take anything for granted, which is something I really, really appreciate in people. If somebody tells you something, don't necessarily take this as, this is the God-sent truth. Be critical, try to look into it, research, develop good research skills. I think maybe the whole topic of research journalism and in this country should be maybe well invested to take a good story. Of course, you need support. You need support. You need outlets that will allow you to do it. But I think this is the process that young journalists in this country, as the new generation, as the generation that hasn't worked, let's say, under previous president's regime or even before, I think young journalists in this country are very open to what is happening in the world. They understand that the journalism is now done in a certain way. They know that they can also express their personal views, maybe also as bloggers. To find this combination and to understand that it's your, I think it's always your responsibility to make this profession good, honest, to be done right, and then you will pave the way for future journalists. And maybe if we will have this conversation about a decade, we will understand that Uzbekistan has truly changed in the direction that it should go.
Thank you, Ms. Zehavit. It was a very interesting conversation with you. Thank you, dear viewers, for watching this program. See you in the next episodes.